My name is Shannon Cole, a 33-year-old nurse in Burlington, Vermont. I've seen people break, bleed, and fight to stay alive, but nothing prepares you for when your own family cuts you off like a bad habit. It happened on a Thursday night, right between back-to-back ER shifts. My phone buzzed while I was refilling my coffee. I answered expecting a quick, "How are you?" Instead I got, "Don't come home for Christmas." The voice on the other end was flat, almost bored, as if she were reading a grocery list. I froze. "Excuse me. You always make things tense. We just want a peaceful holiday this year." Peaceful. That word landed like a slap. Last year, I'd paid for their heating, bought gifts for everyone, and still got called distant. I took a slow breath and said, "Then don't expect my 10,000. Silence. Then a click. Call ended. I stood there for a second staring at the blank screen. Then I opened my laptop, logged into the utility portal, and hit cancel payment. Confirmation flashed. Scheduled transactions canceled. My hand trembled, but I didn't regret it. For once, I wasn't the one begging to belong. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and muttered Merry Christmas to me. Outside, the first flakes of snow began to fall, quiet, unbothered, like they already knew what was coming. Sometimes family warmth isn't about love, it's about control. Before we dive deeper, tell me, have you ever been blamed for setting boundaries? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. 3 days later, their Christmas photos appeared online like nothing had happened. My phone lit up with tags. I didn't want to see smiling faces, matching sweaters, and the same living room where I'd once spent every holiday helping decorate. The caption under my mother's post read, "Peaceful family Christmas ahead." I didn't even need to zoom in to notice what was missing me. At the center of the photo stood Lauren, my younger sister, perfectly posed between our parents, holding up her wrist with that familiar gold bracelet, the one I'd given her 2 Christmases ago, when she'd been too broke to buy gifts. Now she wore it like a trophy with her caption on her own page, reading "Mom's Little Angel." It wasn't a coincidence. It was a performance. For a few seconds, I just stared. My thumb hovered over the comment button, then dropped the phone instead. I wasn't angry, just numb. The scene looked perfect, fire crackling, matching mugs, smiles rehearsed. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were the kind of family who never cut someone out for breathing wrong. A message popped up from Diane, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, saw your family's Christmas post. Why aren't you home this year?" I typed deleted, then finally sent. They said, "Peace needs my absence." The typing dots appeared for a moment, then disappeared. She didn't reply. I didn't blame her. No one ever knows what to say when the good family story cracks open. Later that evening, I made tea and opened my email. One unread message blinked at the top from Margaret Cole. Subject, "Please don't take it personally, dear." My stomach tightened. Dear. That's what she called the bank teller, the mailman, the nurse at her dentist's office, not her daughter. I didn't click it. I knew it would be full of polite phrases disguising guilt, the kind that makes you feel bad for wanting basic respect. I sat down on the couch, laptop on my knees, and opened my online banking app just to distract myself. That's when I saw it, the monthly transfers still active under recurring payments. Their heating, electricity, and water bills were still being paid automatically from my account. For a moment, I just watched the spinning blue circle load the next line, next payment scheduled December 20th. They had removed me from Christmas but still expected my money to show up on time. I exhaled through my teeth, clicked Manage Payments, and stared at the screen. Every line item represented something I had quietly handled for 2 years. Every missed family dinner justified by, "You know how much we appreciate it, Shannon." My name sat on every bill, every transaction, every small sacrifice. This time, I hovered over heating and electric and clicked Cancel. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to discontinue these services?" I clicked, yes. Then again. Then again. The words, Heating and electricity accounts canceled successfully flashed across the screen in neat green text. For a few seconds, my chest felt hollow, like I had just deleted proof that I cared. But the feeling shifted. Beneath the guilt came something calmer, cleaner, a strange sense of balance. A video call rang in. Ethan, my friend from the ER, appeared on screen, his scrub still half unzipped from a late shift. Hey, you look like someone just made a decision. His tone was light, but his eyes caught the tension in mine. I cut off their utilities, I said. The words came out flat, more factual than emotional. He blinked. Wow. Feels weird cutting them off. I shook my head. It's not revenge. It's balance. They wanted peace. I gave them peace. Just not the kind they expected. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. You sure they'll be okay? It's Vermont in December, not California. I sipped my tea. They'll figure it out. They always do. They just won't be using me to do it this time. For a while, we talked about work, a car accident case from the previous night, a patient who tried to sneak out for a cigarette mid-IV drip. Normal things. But when the call ended, I didn't move. I stared at the small reflection of myself in the black laptop screen, my face lit only by the glow of canceled payments. Somewhere deep down, I expected my phone to buzz, maybe a message, a missed call, an angry text. Nothing came. The silence felt louder than any apology could have. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying small flurries that danced under the streetlight. The city felt suspended, like everyone was holding their breath before the storm. I turned the radio on just for background noise. The announcer's calm voice read out a weather warning. A major snowstorm is expected to hit the Northeast by the end of the week. Residents are advised to stock up on essentials and prepare for possible power outages. The irony almost made me laugh. I reached for my notebook, the one where I used to jot down reminders for shifts and patient follow-ups, and flipped to a clean page. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt as I wrote. I finally stopped paying for peace that never existed. The words looked right. For the first time, they didn't sting. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't family. It was an automated alert confirming the final disconnection, account closure complete. Final billing cycle ended. $10,000, that's what I had in savings now. The number used to feel small, like a placeholder for something better. Tonight, it felt like freedom. Not the dramatic kind you shout about, but the quiet, steady kind that lets you breathe again. I logged out, turned off the laptop, and set my mug down beside it. The apartment hummed with low, even warmth from my own heater, the one I paid for, the one I could rely on. I whispered to the empty room. Let's see how peaceful Christmas feels without me. The wind pressed harder against the glass, whistling through the corners of my window. Somewhere far away, their lights might already be flickering, but here it was calm still, and finally mine. By Christmas Eve, every radio in Burlington carried the same warning: a level 4 snowstorm moving fast from the north. The announcer's calm voice couldn't hide the tremor beneath it. People were already stripping stores, bare candles, water flashlights, bread, anything that felt like control. From my apartment window, the first snow sliced sideways through the air, sharp and urgent. My laptop pinged. Service disconnected. Unpaid balance. I didn't need to open it, but I did anyway. Green Mountain Power had officially cut off service to my parents' house. Christmas Eve, 8:02 p.m. Perfect timing. I stared at the message, then closed it. A small, strange calm settled over me. Right on schedule. By midnight, the city had turned into a white blur. Snow piled against windows, wind howled like it had a memory. My apartment was warm, quiet, wrapped in the hum of the heater I paid for myself. I made tea and thought of them, my parents. My sister huddled in that big old house on Hillcrest Avenue. The last time I'd been there, my mother told me I brought the cold with me. Maybe she was finally feeling what that meant. The next morning, headlines screamed, "Historic blizzard freezes Vermont." I scrolled through updates until a video caught my eye. Frozen street in Burlington suburbs. Someone had filmed the neighborhood I grew up in. Cars locked under ice roofs heavy with snow, no lights anywhere. Then the camera turned, and there it was, my parents' house. I knew those blue shutters, that slanted roof. Even through a screen, I could almost feel the cold bleeding through the walls. My phone buzzed. Ethan. You've seen it, right? Yeah, I said. You okay watching that? I'm not watching, I replied quietly. I'm remembering. He didn't speak for a moment. Wind whistled through his mic. Some people would call this revenge, he said finally. It's not revenge, I answered. It's gravity. You stop holding something up, it falls. He sighed. Stay warm, Shannon. After the call, I sat in silence. The storm outside thickened and snow tapped the glass in uneven rhythm. My lights flickered once, then steadied. The heater hummed again, loyal and steady. I turned on the radio. The voice was cautious, strained. Emergency crews are delayed. If you're without power, shelter in place. I pictured my mother piling blankets, Lauren trying to light a candle while filming her tears for sympathy online. I didn't smile. It wasn't joy, I felt it was symmetry. For once, the world was showing them what silence really sounded like. I walked to the window and watched the city disappear behind white. The reflection looking back at me didn't flinch. I opened my journal and wrote, I stopped paying for peace that never existed, and the storm came to collect what's left. On the radio, Silent Night started playing. The irony almost made me laugh. I let it play, let the static mix with the wind's roar. Somewhere, something cracked a branch, maybe ice on the roof, but I didn't move. I just whispered they wanted quiet. Now they have it. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, I stayed still, warm, and free. By the second night, their house had turned into a ghost on the hill. The place that once glowed like a lantern every December now stood in perfect darkness, no smoke, no warmth, no life. My phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Shannon. This is Marcy from across your parents' street. Your mom's outside trying to light candles. Everything's frozen solid. I thought you should know. Her voice cracked from the cold, or maybe from guilt. I swallowed, pressing the phone tighter to my ear, but I didn't respond. What could I say? That it wasn't my turn to fix the dark anymore. I just said, thanks for letting me know, and ended the call. My hand shook slightly when I put the phone down, but not from sadness, just from memory. I turned to the bookshelf where an old photo sat between two nursing textbooks my family 3 Christmases ago. Mom in red, Lauren holding mistletoe above us, Dad pretending to laugh, and me, the only one not smiling. I picked up the frame, wiped off a thin layer of dust, then set it face down. That night, I opened social media out of habit, not intention. The algorithm knew me too well, it showed Lauren's post first. She'd uploaded a photo taken before the storm, her smiling in front of the Christmas tree captioned "Still Blessed." I stared at it longer than I wanted to. The comments section was brutal. Blessed you froze your own sister before the storm did. Another said, guess karma doesn't need snow boots. For a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. Mom's friends had joined the thread defending her, blaming the younger generation for disrespecting family. I scrolled past them all. The noise didn't sting, it numbed. The internet was doing what it always did, pretending to understand. But this time, the judgment wasn't pointed at me. It was an echo aimed back at the people who taught me silence. I got up and poured water into the kettle. The pipes hissed with warmth. Mine still worked. When the kettle clicked, I leaned against the counter, staring at the rising steam. Somewhere out there, they were probably blowing into their hands, trying to make warmth from air. Another notification popped up, an anonymous message. Maybe now they know what you felt. I didn't reply. That wasn't the point. Pain shared isn't balance. It's a mirror. I closed the app and went back to the living room. The power blinked once, then steadied. Outside, the storm had softened, but the wind still howled like a restless ghost circling the ridge. I sat down on the couch and picked up my journal. Writing had always been my way of making sense of chaos. Tonight, though, the page stayed blank for a long time. My pen hovered my hand cold, even with the heater on. Then, without really thinking, I wrote, "Cold doesn't punish, it teaches." I stopped and stared at the sentence. It didn't sound like something born from anger. It sounded like a law of nature. The cold wasn't there to hurt them. It was there to make them understand absence, to feel what I'd felt when love was conditional, when warmth was earned, not given. Another ring startled me this time, a text alert. It was from Ethan. "You okay?" I typed back, "Yeah, just quiet tonight." He replied, "The storm's ending soon." I looked out the window. The snow had slowed, but the world still looked frozen in place. "Not yet," I wrote back. "Some storms end late." I set the phone down and glanced at the dark photo frame on the shelf. For the first time, it didn't ache to see it turned away. I wrapped myself in a blanket and listened as the wind started to fade. There was a stillness in the air that felt less like peace and more like aftermath. Before going to bed, I walked to the window one last time. The hill was barely visible now, a black cutout against the faint silver of the storm. Somewhere behind that curtain of snow, my family sat in a house that no longer glowed. I wondered if Mom still believed silence meant peace. I whispered to my reflection, "Maybe silence is finally honest." The heater hummed on cue, steady and faithful. I picked up my journal again and drew a single line under the sentence I'd written earlier, then closed it. The cold had its way of reminding people what warmth costs and what happens when you stop pretending to share it. By day 4, the storm had moved from the sky to the screen. The blizzard outside had started to fade, but online it was only beginning. My phone buzzed non-stop, its light flashing against the dim room. When I opened it, there she was, Lauren, pale face wrapped in scarves, eyes wet but camera ready. Her post read, "We lost power. Please pray for my family." Her voice trembled just enough to sound sincere. 4 nights without heat. Out. Mom's sick. Dad's trying to keep us warm. Please send prayers. The comments fell like snowflakes, hearts crying emojis. Stay strong, and prayers from Arizona. It was all very moving until one comment cut through like ice. "Didn't your sister pay your bills last year?" Within an hour, the storm turned digital. That single comment climbed to the top, screenshotted, reshared, dissected. Someone even dug up Mom's old post, "Thanks to Shannon for keeping our home warm last winter." Another user mocked, "Blessed you, froze the hand that fed you." By noon, my name was trending across Burlington. Strangers argued fiercely, some called me heartless, others defended me. Boundaries aren't betrayal. A few took it too far, posting pictures of my apartment building, guessing which window was mine. I didn't respond. I just sipped my coffee, warm and steady. Then came the local news headline, "Holiday storm leaves family stranded." The photo was unmistakable, my parents' dark house buried in snow. The article didn't mention me, but the comments did. Hundreds of them. A message popped up from Ethan. "You've become the villain in their story and the hero in someone else's." I stared at it for a while before typing back, "Maybe both roles tell the same truth." He replied with a snowflake emoji. That night, I opened Twitter. My fingers hovered above the keyboard for a long time before I finally attached 3 images, old utility bills I had paid for them last winter, each stamped, "Paid in full, Shannon E. Lawson." Then I typed a single line. "Some storms clear the air. No hashtags, no names, no anger. Just the quiet proof of everything I'd carried." I hit post. Within minutes, the screenshots spread like wildfire. Some called it graceful revenge, others called it a wake-up call. A journalist even captioned it, "The calmest storm on the internet." By midnight, my inbox overflowed support, outrage, disbelief. But I didn't respond. I just watched the numbers climb while the wind howled outside my window carrying the same message my post had. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a voice, only evidence. The next morning, my post had crossed 1 million views. People argued endlessly, YouTube commentators, Reddit threads, podcasts. Everyone had a theory about who was right or wrong. I scrolled through detached. It was strange watching strangers narrate my life as if it were public property. Ethan called again. "You holding up?" he asked. "You're trending worldwide." I smiled faintly. "Attention melts faster than snow," I said. "Let it." He hesitated. "Do you regret it?" I answered. "No. Cutting power wasn't cruelty. It was honesty." Later that evening, I turned off all notifications. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. When I opened my messages one last time before bed, one stood out from a woman named Hope Writes. "I saw your post. I finally understand my sister. Thank you." I smiled and closed my phone. That was enough. By then, the storm outside had gone still. The wind softened, brushing the glass gently like an afterthought. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the city glow again. My name was still trending, but I didn't care. They called me heartless. They called me strong. They called me everything except what I truly became: free. I closed my journal and wrote the final line before turning off the light. Silence isn't surrender. It's closure. When the snow finally calmed, so did my resolve. 3 days after the storm, the world outside was still bruised and heavy, but the city was beginning to breathe again. I was making tea when the doorbell rang, a sound so ordinary that it startled me. Through the frosted glass, I saw her, my mother, Margaret. She stood on the porch in a soaked parka, snow clinging to her boots. Her eyes rimmed red like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door halfway. The warmth of my apartment spilled into the frozen hallway, and for a moment we both stood in that threshold, two climates that no longer belonged to the same world. "Lauren's sick," she said finally, her breath trembling in the cold air. "The house. It's unlivable. The pipes burst. We've been staying in the car. Please, help us." I didn't move. The steam from my tea drifted between us like a fog. "You came here because there's nowhere else," I said quietly. She nodded, eyes glossy. "Lauren was fragile. You know how she is." Her tone was soft, but the word fragile cut deep. "No," I said evenly, "she wasn't fragile. She was favored." Margaret flinched. I saw it, the quick flicker of guilt she tried to bury behind maternal pity. "That's not fair," she whispered. "You were always independent. You didn't need as much." I almost laughed. "You're right," I said. "I didn't need much, just honesty." Her phone buzzed. She hesitated before answering. A familiar voice carried through the speaker: "Lauren." I heard coughing, sniffling, a faint echo of apology tangled in self-pity. "Shannon," she croaked. "Mom said you're being cold again." I took a breath. "Tell Mom to fix what she broke," I said. "I'm done being the heater of this family." The silence on the other end was thick enough to touch. Then the line went dead. Margaret's tears spilled freely now. "Please, sweetheart, don't do this. We didn't mean to cut you off. We were just trying to keep peace." "Peace," I repeated. "You wanted peace without me. Now you have it." I took a step back into the apartment, my hand tightening on the doorknob. She reached out, fingers trembling, desperate to stop the closing door. "I'm your mother," she whispered. "That's the only title you kept," I said. But you let the meaning freeze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the wind carried flakes across the porch light, turning everything ghost white. Her breath came out in clouds, vanishing faster than she could replace it. I almost pitied her, almost. But pity was the same door I'd already closed once before. I let it stay shut this time. "You wanted space?" I said softly. "This is what space feels like." She looked past me into the warm apartment she used to call my waste of money. The kettle clicked behind me and the scent of tea filled the room. Please, she said again, voice breaking. Lauren's just a child. She's 28, I said, and she's never paid a single bill without me. I paused. That's not childhood. That's dependency you raised. The truth landed between us like ice cracking on a lake. My mother wiped her eyes with a wet glove, then straightened slightly as if remembering she used to have authority here. You'll regret this, she said. You'll wake up and realize family's all you have. I met her eyes. I already woke up, I said. And I realized peace is all I need. I closed the door. The latch clicked, a sound sharp enough to echo down the hall. For a few seconds I stood there, hands still on the doorknob, listening to her muffled sobs fade under the wind. Then I turned off the porch light. The shadows folded back into silence. At the window, I watched her walk away. The snow gave under her boots, leaving uneven tracks down the path. For a moment she stopped, glanced back at the building, then disappeared into the street's pale mist. The world outside was still broken, but mine wasn't. I sat back down, picked up my tea, lukewarm now, and wrote in my journal, some doors close with sound. Others close with choice. I looked at that sentence for a long time before underlining it once. The ink bled slightly into the paper like frost melting into glass. Then I blew out the candle on the table. The flame bent, flickered, and went out. The apartment was quiet again. Quiet, but alive. Outside, the city exhaled under a clearing sky. Inside, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness that wasn't loneliness. Quiet that wasn't punishment. When the wind brushed against the window one last time, it sounded like applause. By January, the snow began to melt, but not everything thawed. The streets of Burlington were lined with gray slush, the sound of dripping ice mixing with early bird song. People were moving on, but some stories stayed frozen in the headlines. I saw mine that morning, front page, the Vermont Chronicle family, displaced after ice storm, home condemned. Beneath the title was a picture I recognized immediately, my mother's porch, the one where I had closed the door. The caption read, Margaret Lawson and daughter Lauren temporarily relocated after severe structural damage. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not out of pity, out of recognition. That house had finally reflected what it always was, cracked at the foundation, cold beneath the lights. The irony wasn't lost on me. At the community center downtown, I stood in line with other volunteers holding boxes of blankets and canned food. The banner above read, Warm Vermont, help families recover. When it was my turn, I slipped an envelope into the donation box. $10,000. The same amount I once sent every December, except this time it didn't go to one house, it went to hundreds. Ethan met me by the exit, his coat collar up against the chill. You ever think of calling them? He asked. I smiled faintly. No. Some fires should stay out. He nodded slowly, like someone who understood more than he'd ever say. Outside, the air still smelled faintly of ash from broken power lines and burnt insulation. Yet for the first time, I could breathe deeply. I walked past a group of volunteers stacking heaters into a truck, their laughter rising above the hum of the engine. The sound was ordinary, comforting, a kind of warmth that didn't require blood ties. My phone buzzed. It was Aunt Nora, her voice as brisk as ever. I saw the paper, she said. Lauren's staying with friends. Your mom's renting some cheap motel off Route 9. I didn't ask how she knew. She always knew. That's the home they built, I said quietly. Cold and borrowed. Nora sighed. You did what you had to do, sweetheart. I know, I said. That's the hard part. After the call, I sat on the stone steps outside the center watching people come and go. Everyone seemed to carry something, boxes, coats, hot coffee, and yet none of them felt heavy. For the first time, neither did I. That afternoon, I opened my journal, the same one that had followed me through every silent night of this winter. I wrote, Closure isn't forgiveness, it's distance. I paused, then added, Sometimes walking away is the kindest way to stop burning. I looked around the shelter one more time. A little girl was giggling as her mother helped her zip a donated jacket. A man unwrapped a sandwich and shared half with someone beside him. It wasn't a perfect world, but it was a decent one full of people who still believed warmth could be rebuilt. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit the melting snow, scattering gold across the puddles. For a moment, I saw my reflection tired but steady and thought, this is peace. Not the quiet they demanded, but the quiet I chose. Ethan waved from the parking lot, loading another crate into the van. "You good?" he called. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Better than good." The air carried the faint scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney. I closed my eyes and listened not to the past but to the hum of a city waking up again. They could freeze. I stayed free. The words formed themselves in my mind, clean and final. When I returned home that evening, the apartment was dim except for the fireplace's low glow. The flames flickered against the window, reflected in my eyes, soft, steady, and unafraid. I sat down, pulled the blanket over my knees, and whispered to the fire. "This time, I keep the warmth." The flames crackled in reply, quiet but alive. "Fade out. Thank you for staying till the end." Have you ever had to walk away to stay sane? Share your story below. Maybe it'll help someone else.